Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. I'm your host, Chad. Joining me, as always, Marcus. Marcus, how the hell are you?
Good, man.
Y'all at home with us, but we're recording this like 2 hours later than we normally do, so bear with us. We're talking Rebellion. It is this weekend. It is in my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. Not exactly accurate. I'm not from Cleveland, the suburbs of Cleveland, but Cleveland. I will not be attending. I have work. I have a long back shift I gotta do. I'll be watching. I'll be looking. I'll be in person. And admittedly, with how poor the build-up has been for this show, and with how lackluster I think the card is, I'm kind of glad I'm not wasting my money. I have not seen ticket sales for this though in a while. Like I don't know if they're still hovering around like the 1,500 mark. Now Cleveland does a good job with walk-up tickets normally, so I wouldn't be surprised if they end up getting a bit of a boost for the last couple bits of it. But I could almost guarantee you that this is going to be far from a sellout, just with how mediocre they've been building up to it, and just the general lack of focus. Because we're a week removed, man. What was it? Sacrifice. So I don't know. I feel like they have to hit a home run with this show. They got to do something. I'm on Russell Ticket's Twitter account, and they're not. Here we go.
For them to get Cena to host it
What's that?
last minute.
What'd you say?
I'm looking for them to pull a last minute to get Cena to host it.
Right at this point, you kind of almost expect it. They had a sellout for Sacrifice to close out March. That was good. It wasn't a high-loaded show, but it was something. And we can just actually, we can actually look up the tickets ourselves. We don't need these guys. Let's see. Let's purchase tickets. See what we're looking at. Now I'm doing this on a different screen, so you guys may not be able to see it. So let's see. It looks like the upper decks are almost completely open. It looks like the lower bowls are almost completely open. It looks like everything on the lower section in front of the camera and the ringside stuff is sold out. But that's about it. So I would say 1,500 tickets of 4,500, 4,200, something like that. I think there's about a third of the arena that's still very much open, or I should say there's a third of the arena that's not open. So it's not selling well. It's not selling well.
And how much percentage would you attribute that to the turnaround from show to show versus the booking?
I think it's comparable. I haven't watched this past week's episode yet, but I have not heard good things about it. Moreover, I think not building up this card while trying to build up Sacrifice 2 weeks before, I think hurt it quite a bit. And it didn't need to. You could have been doing enough to get both shows built up and booked properly if you had the roster necessary to do so. But they're so thin on top end talents that I think it became very hard for them to part and part with both events so close to one another. So I'm a little surprised that the tickets aren't moving as well as they are. But considering how bad television's been, considering how bad. Because like the last few weeks have not been well received by the fans. I think the opening match from this past week's show has been good. I think people enjoyed it, but I don't think they enjoyed the entire episode. I think Sacrifice was a solid show, but I think when you have the ending that you did, I do think there are people who are going to be like, the momentum isn't there right now. Plus, isn't WrestleMania this weekend?
Not this weekend, I think next weekend.
So, like, you know, down economy, I'm sure people are going to be prioritizing, what they pick to watch and what have you. So, I think there's just a lot of kind of negative converging events happening all at once for TNA. And I think we're seeing kind of the effects of what happens when you try to slam too many things together. I think this was a poorly booked stretch of shows for them in terms of just like you know, the dates that they're airing on and putting together stuff. Because Rebellion's a pay per view. Sacrifice was a premium streaming event. Rebellion's a pay per view. And they didn't do anything to book it or build it up or make it feel at all impressive. And the problem is, now we're going into these gimmicks that they're doing. They're bringing in Bernie Kosar to hop in the corner of Nick Nemeth. Now, if you don't know who Bernie Kosar is, let me give you a quick little history lesson. He was arguably a top 5, maybe top 10 quarterback in the NFL in the 1980s. He was among the more popular guys to ever play for the Cleveland Browns, and he still is among the more popular guys who have ever played for the Cleveland Browns. He is the closest thing the Browns have to a god in terms of like legends. He has next to no negative like public issues. Like you could talk about Jim Brown, but Jim Brown had a litany of assaults, sexual assaults, rape allegations. He didn't really have a clean life. Bernie doesn't have any of that. So like Bernie is a lot more cookie cutter in terms of like public awareness than Jim Brown was, and fans still go gaga for him. So like this is TNA's attempt to try to get Cleveland to care about this event. But I haven't heard anyone talking about Bernie Kosar being at this event in Cleveland, and I am from Cleveland. So that kind of gives you a big to do, or at least shows you a little bit about what is or isn't happening right now. As far as what I think he'll do, being in the corner of Nick Nemeth, I don't expect much from it. Nick Nemeth is facing AJ Francis, and I know Francis has his fans, though few and far between. I'm sure. I'm not one of them, and I think Francis, for the most part, holds back matches. So like I'm not excited about this match. But this is a pretty weak attempt to try to get a fandom to care about this event. They would have been better off trying to land someone like Myles Garrett or who else is on the Browns? Joel Petonio, Shedeur Sanders. Even if you may not be a big fan of him as a player, there's still a lot of fans who would show up to see him and support him, and I think that would have been a better get. But I don't think the Browns. I don't think TNA has the reach they need to land those guys. So Bernie's the best they can get.
I
Now,
was gonna say, like he mentioned, they could have got Steve Harvey to do something, but that he's probably out of their budget.
and Steve Harvey doesn't live in Cleveland. He's from Cleveland, I think, but I
Yeah.
think he lives in Florida because that's where he does the hosting for the Family Feud. Now, that being said, TNA does still have 9 matches on their show, and for the most part, it looks fine. It looks like an enjoyable show. It looks like a show that I think people will really be into. I just don't think it's going to be a show that will change the way we see wrestling. The X Division match should be a lot of fun. It's Leon Slater versus Cedric Alexander. I have a strong feeling because I think Leon Slater's contract is coming to an end. And I think if that's true, they're going to move the belt to somebody they feel deserves and can carry the X Division title for a little bit. And I think that's said. And then I think the goal is to maybe take the belt off of him and put on Ricky Sosa. Even though Ricky Sosa is like 6'4", 215, 225, I still think that's the move. And if that's where they go, I could see Ced winning on Saturday in Cleveland. Marcus, Cedric, Leon, X Division title. What's your thoughts?
I think there's some interference there. Cedric could take it. Like you said, when's the contract narrative around Leon supposed to be up for?
Rumors fall winter, I think.
So I can see him very much. They do a straight up and down match. I see Slater retaining. Um, but I could see Sid eventually get it, keep this coming up because right now a lot of momentum's with the system. Like I said, the change in regime as we've seen, and I think obviously more all the momentum's with Slater right now, but I think Cedric could carry a good ton of momentum. Somebody you can rely on for consistency, good matches and whatnot. Um, but I do look for Slater to retain. I do look for it to be a solid open. So the X division rarely, if ever, disappoints in this flop. So
Very true. We got Frankie Kazarian versus Elijah next. I'm not entirely sure why this feud is happening, but it is. I do think this is going to lead into Buff Bagwell's eventual in-ring return, which I believe will happen either at Slammiversary or Bound for Glory. And I think Elijah will be his tag team partner, and I think Frankie Kazarian and more than likely AJ Francis will be the opposition. If that ends up being the case, I think it could be a real fun little match. But we got to get to point A. We got to go from point A to point B to point C to get there. And I feel like this might be the first inclination of building up to Buff Bagwell's eventual return match slash retirement match, depending on how he wants to go about it. I think him and Elijah could be a lot of fun. I think Elijah and Frankie Kazarian have different enough styles to work really well together. And while I don't know if Elijah is a world champion in TNA, I do have to say that Elijah has been a relatively shocking addition to the TNA roster since joining. I've always liked Elijah when he was Elias. I thought he was a good
mm.
promo, good personality. He's a really good athlete and an even better wrestler. And while I don't think he's a world champion kind of guy, I do think he's someone that adds to whatever match he's in. So I think this could be a lot of fun. I think Elijah's going over. Marcus, thoughts on this one?
quick caveat question before I get to the straight up and down match. Do you think TNA has misbooked things in terms of because we talked about it like Ali has been an MVP. Um, you've come around on him. That's been cool to see. Do you think they've misbooked it in terms? Because I could very well see like Elijah and Mustafa having a quality feud over the like the international title. I guess what I'm asking, do you think they've blown feuds that should have had a title in between them? Because now that I'm looking at some of these people going potentially towards titles, all the feuds that I'm looking for around those titles, they've already done. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I do think that it's like we got a little Elijah and Mustafa already, but not having the international title around that feud to kind of get to where they are now, I do think was a mistake. I know, Trey's, he's in therapy, he's working out, he's doing all this great stuff. Trey has a ceiling that I think we've already hit and we're pressing against. And I don't think a Trey Miguel title win is going to do anything for his career, nor do anything for that belt. And I think had you gone with Mustafa and Elijah to start the year and have them be the center point of the belt for a little while, maybe having taken it off Macklin or what have you, I have Mustafa take it off of Macklin before he left. I think that would have been a lot of fun to see, and I think it would have elevated the belt. And I think right now this belt's kind of hanging in limbo, and I don't think they're doing enough with the international championship to make it worthwhile. And I think a feud of that magnitude of Elijah and Mustafa would have been really what the belt needs. So I'm hoping, and we'll get to that one later, but I am hoping that Mustafa takes the belt home Saturday.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but yeah,
but
so Frankie and Elijah.
yeah, I'm going with Elijah on this. I think he's carrying momentum. I think Frankie is in a unique spot with um, victories and losses. Obviously, you don't want to tip the scales too much in the loss, maybe because he was just a world champion. Um, so you do want to keep him fresh in that regard. But he's good in a spot that he can oscillate up and down the card with anybody right now. And 'cause he used up his call your shot, right? Yeah, he won
Yeah,
the title, so yeah, that's done. But yeah, I definitely see Elijah coming out on top on this. Yeah, because I think to your point, he's somebody that they can bet on, that's shown consistency, that's shown he can elevate matches, and not just in the ring but out the ring. So we got to keep that momentum with him.
I would agree with that. We then move to the six-woman hardcore country tag team match. We have the Elegance brand, which is Ash, Heather, and M by Elegance, taking on Mickey James, ODB, and Taryn Terrell. I very much see the Elegance brand going over. There's no reason to have the veterans or the legends go over in this match, only because if you're trying to do something with them long term, sure. I don't think ODB, Taryn Terrell, or Mickey James are sticking around past this event. If they do, I think I think Mickey and Taryn as tag champions make a lot of sense. I think that could be a lot of fun. And I think they can help elevate some of the talent around them. But I think the Elegance brand needs this one more than not. And I think Taryn Terrell is, in fact, not just coming out of retirement for this match. I think she's coming out of retirement going forward because she's launched merch on her Pro Wrestling Tees account. So I
Mm.
have to imagine that she might be sticking around TNA or at least the wrestling scene for a little bit longer than not. And if that ends up being true, I could very much see Taryn Terrell taking a belt at some point this year from the Elegance brand. So I think this should be a lot of fun, and I think it'll give Heather and Em a real big opportunity to showcase what they got. Because I do think they're among the better wrestlers on the roster, and they're just not getting the chance to showcase it. And I think they'll have a chance here on Saturday. I got the Elegance brand going over though, Marcus.
I'm with you right there, man. Hart wants to be with the OGs, but ultimately, this seems like a relatively simple story to tell. That they gotta shake some rust off. For you would think that talent and experience, obviously holds with the OGs, but they haven't been doing it consistently. I mean, you got ODBs, bam. She's been doing that, with a food truck and whatnot. Mickey James is, you got to catch on to good night, and Taryn is remain athletic and in shape and whatnot. But we all know there's a difference between being in shape, regular shape, and ring shape.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a relatively easy story to tell. This has been going on for a minute. No point in just having a lot of these coming in for one and done, kind of extend this. Um, but there's Elegance brand is also shown to be consistent, somebody they can depend on for multiple segments and whatnot across the show. Just do the ring rust thing, and get them out of there with a sneaky win. And yeah, just keep it going until they get these ladies to a point where they make a match where they have the advantage, and then they eventually get the win. But this is seems like simply straightforward right here.
I would agree. We then have Moose versus Special Agent Zero. I do think they're building up to Moose versus Eddie Edwards for the belt later in the year. I think this will be a showcase match for Special Agent Zero. I don't think that necessarily means Moose will lose, but I do think TNA is very high on him, and I think the dude is like 6'8", 6'9". He's a tall mother. So I think they're going to try to do everything they can to get him over so that they can use him away from Order 4. And I think this could be an avenue towards something unique with the guy. But I think personally, Special Agent Zero will go over by hook or by crook, especially with this being the night of the system, so to speak. So like I could see Special Agent Zero getting the win here, and that's who I'm ultimately going to go with: Marcus Moose or Special Agent Zero.
I'm going potentially with Special Agent Zero. I'll go caveat it real quick. Are you anticipating um any type of miscommunication on the eventual turn between Moose and Lich?
No, I don't know what's going on with those two, but I think ultimately she may turn on Moose. I think that's the predictable way to go. And considering who's booking the product right now, I think that's kind of what you should expect is predictable.
Yeah,
Do you think
yeah.
she's
So
do you think she'll turn on Moose?
I feel like it's being set up that way. I mean, it's look that we talked about this before. There's a history here. Like for a minute now, it probably dating all the way back to that that baseball bat to Eddie's eye, and then he snapped and went crazy, and she kind of just hung along for the ride up until he kind of wore down, and then the whole thing with the ROH faction that he had.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of wore down on that. So eventually, even when she struggles, she eventually comes on board. That's kind of the history of consistency with her and Eddie's machinations. So I feel like it's eventually coming. I don't know when or where they're gonna do it. I would imagine it probably likely shoots during him and Eddie's match. But I am looking forward to this match. Like you said, it could be a good showcase match for Agent Zero, and I don't think Moose gets enough credit for just how well he makes people look
He is
for real.
very good
So
at that.
yeah, yeah, he don't get enough credit for that. He was very good with that, particularly when it came to dropping the belt to Slater. So just looking forward to this match, but I'm probably gonna go with Moose on this one because he is, like you said, on the deadline. It feels like the of course, to your point, and how far out is the next? This is gonna be a pay-per-view next, right?
Yeah, this is gonna be a pay per view on Saturday.
Okay, this is gonna be a pay-per-view. How much space we got? What 2 or 3 months in the next?
Uh, to the next pay per view, I don't know when Slammiversary is, but that would be the next one. So
Okay,
if they keep their cycle the same, they tend to do it start of July usually. So I'd say you have somewhere between 2.5 to 3 months, but you're gonna have at least one, if not two more, streaming events in between.
gotcha. I'm gonna go with Moose here. Uh, maybe a win by DQ.
Okay.
Say that.
Then we have Ariana Grace versus Lee Yingli for the Knockouts title. I feel like this was meant to be Danny Luna, but of course Danny Luna's no longer with the promotion. Um, the NXT partnership has been bad, and I don't mean now. I don't mean today. I don't mean this match. I mean since they started doing it 2 years ago. It's been bad. The NXT talent oftentimes are not on the caliber of the TNA talent. The TNA talent has to put over the NXT talent more often than they should ever have to. I I could understand Moose losing to Obafemi, right? I can see that
Hmm.
logic.
Yeah.
Obafemi's a blue chip prospect. The last
Hmm.
one you had before him, and I mean, within the last 6 years, the only other blue chip prospect that's a five tool player was Bronson Steiner, whatever the fuck they're calling him, Bronson Bricker. The only other five tool player they got since their color splatter era started. Trick was fine. Carmelo's fine. Uh, who the fuck is the new NXT champion? He's terrible.
You're talking about Tony D'Angelo.
Yeah, he's awful. Joe Hendry's fine. You've had two blue chip prospects since the paint splatter era started. Ron Breaker, Boba Fett. Losing to them is fine. You can make that, like it'd be like having Randy Savage lose to Goldberg. They're going to be huge stars unless someone fucks them up. So like you get it, you understand it. It makes sense in your kid base. Losing to Stacks, are we out of our fucking minds? So the NXT partnership has been bad. It has not helped with the tickets. Anyone who says it has is lying to you. because part and parcel, they have NXT talent on this show, and they're not moving shit. So clearly, just associating with the NXT brand is not moving the needle. The ratings are not up because of NXT. The tickets are not moving because of NXT. The ratings are up and the tickets are moving because TNA has, for the most part, put on a better than not product. It's not the best product they've ever had. It's not the deepest roster they've ever had, but they are finding ways of making fans care. Ariana Grace is the worst full-time wrestler I have ever seen in my life wrestling in TNA. Full stop. There is not one full-time wrestler I have ever seen in who is worse than her. She is unathletic. She has no concept of wrestling. The ideas, the concepts, the machinations she has in that ring are non-existent. You can tell she's uncomfortable. You can tell she's hesitant. You can tell she doesn't know what she's doing. And she's not even that great of an on-screen character. If it wasn't for the fact that Scott D'Amore saddled us with Santino fucking Marella some 4 years ago, and no one has decided to end that contract, we wouldn't have to sit through this. We wouldn't have to deal with this. This is the worst fucking thing TNA has ever put people through for an extended period of time. I can only imagine that erasing, say, Tessa Blanchard's world title win and Ariana Grace's title win are the only two changes that people in TNA wrestling history would try to make to the actual record books. While a lot of the NXT women who have won belts, in fact, all because it was three of them, JC Jane, the one who's marrying Kalani Jordan, and then wasn't there a third one?
Well, JC Jane, Kalani Jordan, now Ariana Grace, right?
I thought there was I guess there was like a fourth. I guess not, maybe not. All of them have sucked, but Ariana Grace is a new level of terrible. And the booking of the Knockouts division is quite literally keeping talent wanting to be in TNA and re-upping with TNA. Danny Luna quit. Danny Luna's not going to AEW. Not in any realistic major role. She's not going to NXT to be the next big name. She was so unhappy with the company that she left. She might end up in MLW. She might just go back to the British Indies. I don't know. But clearly she isn't happy with something within TNA. Could have been money, could have been booking, could have been the NXT talent of it all. Who knows? But they're in a place where they have to make a move and try to bring the Knockouts division back up to this level of standard that we have for it. Right now, we are all pretty disenfranchised with what's going on with this division. And Ariana Grace being champion, not giving us the heat that people think they are. I would rather the division get folded tomorrow than have to sit through Ariana Grace as champion for another few months. And if that's the answer. If you're so dead set on having Ariana Grace ruin the Knockouts division match after match after match, just fold up the fucking division. Fire every woman who's a wrestler and just focus on the match. Because at that point, you have proven that you don't care about this division, and I would rather you just say goodbye to it than try to prove that Ariana Grace is somehow this important talent that we're giving credit to. She sucks. I'm sure she's a nice lady, Marcus. I'm sure she's a nice lady. I'm sure she's a wonderful human being who does good things for the homeless, who loves on lost puppies and candy stripes on the weekends. As a wrestler, she is fundamentally the worst fucking thing I have ever seen in this industry. And if she was just a mouth in the back, yapping away like so many other on-screen personalities we have, fucking Adam Pearce, fucking James Mitchell, what have you, fine. There's a space for her. If she's just managing against her dad, you could do a little cutesy little thing with that. Throw it on a streaming special and call it a day. They're trying to build a division around her. They're trying to get her to the next pay-per-view. I cannot imagine that this will go well if that's what they end up doing, because it hasn't gone well so far. they could make a change. They could build the belt back on Li Yingling, who's not good. She's fine. She's a good hand
Yeah,
to have, but she's not a champion. But she's
yeah,
such a step up from Ariana Grace that it's going to seem like she is. So just fucking make a move and end all of our miseries. Otherwise, just end the fucking division and really end our miseries. I I
yeah. This
I,
is
I
just,
don't think this is going to go our way though, and I think Ariana Grace is going to retain.
oh god, this is like feels like the last of the Mohicans, really, with the consistency of every now and then that day long and pounded out down. Like Mike recently was on the show teaming with Out the Mud on NXT and showed up and showed out as Mike always does. But yeah, this they got to be done with this. Like put it like on Lee Ying Lee. Um, I haven't always been the highest on her, but like you said, she is at least solid. I was going to ask you, would you potentially see a thing where this is her getting like this would be her winning a second knockout championship? And I don't know if you thought she was ready for something like this yet, because you wasn't high on this person either. Obviously, Grace is the stand-up for stuff right now. But do you think that Brookside could potentially be ready for a heel turn on somebody like Yin Ling Yi if she won it back?
No, and no one should even
Yeah,
be thinking about turning Brookside heel.
yeah,
The less we have to deal with Brookside cutting a promo, the better. I think what you do is you either put the belt on Tessa or you put on Jody Threat. Tessa, at least you know what you're going to get from her. You know, her perception has tanked. Her talent's still there. And Jody Threat at
yeah,
least would be something that would shock the system. It would be something different. Maybe you could get a good run out of her, and you can re-elevate the division back to where it belongs. Li Ying Li is the best of a bad situation, and
yeah,
and the status quo would kill the knockouts division.
yeah. It's a good question. Out of those options that you just laid out, if the goal is to with everything that's going on with these vignettes and whatnot, if the goal is to get this back on Rosemary, who do you put it on? What direction you go?
Go with Li Ying Li, just get it done as soon as possible, and then have
Yeah,
Rosemary take the belt at Slammiversary. I don't know if that's the direction they're going. I think they're going in a tag team title direction, but either way, you know, have Rosemary take it as soon as possible. I don't think you wait for Slammiversary if Rosemary's the end game. If she's not the end game, if you're trying to build up to her, if you want some space, put it on Li Yingli because Ariana Grace can't carry her fucking bags, let alone a division. Tag team title match: the Hardys versus the System. I think they're building up the idea of the System winning way too much for them not to do it in a clean sweep. I think Bronson and Bryan take the belts off the Hardys.
agreed. And I think at this point, the Hardest don't need championships. It's just it's we talked about it, like at this point they're kind of holding the brand up. Um, but they're the biggest part of the brand right now. But they're legends walking, so they don't need the titles. It's cool seeing with the titles and defending titles and all that good jazz. But the juice verbally is with the system. I think Bear and Brian um, probably should win this match. And it probably could be them getting cost this match by the Wizards or whatever their name is.
Oh, the Righteous.
Those two guys, Righteous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. By those two guys. And like I said, all this is solidified in every possible metric. They don't need the titles to go back and forth with those boys. They could eventually go after the titles after they get done with the Hardest. The Hardest could, go back after them. Maybe they could do a three-way tag um, situation with a ladder or something. I don't know. But they could easily drop these to the system, go off and do some spooky dooky stuff, broken style with the Righteous, and then come back for the titles. But I think it'll probably be a good idea at this stage to drop into the system since they are seemingly distracted anyway with everything going on with the Righteous. So I think that could play a part into it. And like you said, it could be a system night, which would be the worst thing. So
No, no, it would not be the worst thing. I don't think though that this would be the end of the Hardys title reign. for good. I think if the system wins here, I think you could see the Hardys win them back at Slammiversary because they
Mhm.
are one reign behind the current champs of Beer Money and the Wolves at 5. They're currently
Mm.
sitting at 4, and they are about 16 odd days away from surpassing LAX as the most combined days as champion in TNA history. So I think losing the belts on Saturday would then set up their big win on Slammiversary. I think they would then lose the belts again so that they could get the sixth and final championship reign at Bound for Glory. I think that's what they're
Yeah.
going to do because this regime is very big in on setting records, and I think that's a big reason why Leon Slater hasn't lost the
Yeah.
belt yet because they want him to set the record. At least I think. But
Yeah. He
with
just broke one, right?
yeah, he's now number 2 all time in his current reign. But Leon and the Hardys could both lose on this weekend. However, with them both about to set records, the Hardys surpassing LAX, Ortiz, and Santana as the most combined days as champion. And with Slater about to surpass Austin Aries as the longest X Division champion ever, could see the system not having the night that we think they could. But I do think Brian Myers and Bear Bronson win on the weekend. That takes us to the main event: Mike Santana versus Eddie Edwards World Championship. We'll get to Mike Santana specifically here in a little bit. Eddie's lost a lot of weight. He is more physically fit than we've seen him in years. He is arguably the top heel in the company with the top heel group. And I think it makes too much sense not to give him a run for a few months where he's just putting on as many bangers as his body can let him. I think Eddie wins, and he starts his third run as world champion. Marcus, do you think Eddie is going to end up winning the title on Saturday?
I don't know, and I don't know because there's a dangling modifier here that I'm keen to get your opinion on. Is dropping the title on Eddie worth abandoning everything they built up between Santana and Macklin? And if so, did it do it? You think it still needs the title?
I don't think Macklin and Santana need the title. And when we talk about Santana here in a little bit, I'll explain to you why I don't think that'll end up happening anyway. I
Gotcha.
think Eddie in the system is your hot hand, and I think you go with your hot hand for as long as you can. The system's not as hot as Aces and Eights for main event Mafia in terms of a heel stable, but I do think if you're about to bring in names like I think you're about to bring in, and you're about to make the corrective changes to the storylines that I think they're about to make, I think you have to have the system with the gold, and I think you have to go with the direction forward. But we'll see if my predictions are right. We're going to talk more about that here in a second. Marcus, do you think Saints retains?
Yeah, I'm going with retain. I'm not going to retain. I'm just pretending it's gonna go down. I just it's just weird because it feels like they beat him. It almost feels like prankish at this point. The way that they booked him to the title for his first win, and then having him drop it the way he did, and then having to get him back to it. I just hate to see it for him, but at the same time, I'm conflicted because this is Eddie's feast of fire
Mm-hmm.
situation. So I can see Santana um it retain even with everything that's looming.
I could see that. Let's talk real briefly about Mike Santana. Rumors are about that his contract is up, and if that's the case, I could see Santana losing the belt this weekend and having one final feud with Macklin where Macklin goes over all before Santana goes off to NXT. That seems to be the curse of TNA right now. Until they start spending more money on homegrown, they're going to keep losing Deanna Parazzo. They're going to keep losing George Graves. They're going to keep losing Joe Hendry and Mike Santana and Ace Austin and Speedball and Josh Alexander. They're going to keep losing these guys. I don't want them to, but if you're not going to pay them what they're worth, they're going to go someplace where they're going to be paid what they're worth, even if they're not going to be used to the same degree that other places would use them. Because ultimately, this is a business. They're not fantasy booking themselves to be greedy. They want to get paid. They want to retire happy. They want to make sure that when they do finally stop wrestling, that they're set. So I don't blame them for this. I don't blame them for wanting to chase the bag. I don't blame them for worrying about their payday. That's on TNA to make sure that they pony up. And as a Cleveland Guardians fan, I can tell you that I've seen enough guys with talent leave the team for bigger and better paydays. Almost every time, they never get the bump to their reputation that they think they will. They often always end up looking lower than they were in Cleveland. And that's kind of been the trend for TNA going forward. Josh Alexander's been a lower mid-card guy who puts on good matches but doesn't do anything. And Austin is a utility guy on Ring of Honor. Jordan Grace, I don't even know what she's doing on SmackDown, but it sure as hell ain't anything of relevance because I don't hear anyone talking about her. Deanna Prato is the Ring of Honor Women's Pure Champion, but she's not wrestling much, and that upsets her. So I could see, Santana leaving. I can't see Santana having a better career once he leaves, though. I think it's bound to happen, and I think fans should prepare for it. Marcus, do you think Santana?
Sadly, yeah. Only because it's like they've shown some real ineptitude to playing at the field when it comes to pay for whatever final reason. We don't know why Danny Luna left right now. Maybe she eventually comes out with it and says it. Maybe she doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, pay is coming to play because it's too many names that you mentioned that we fell in love with because they clearly was in love with the game of it. Like they went out there, that you could clearly tell, particularly somebody like Josh Alexander, just definitely somebody that just did it for the love of the game, and went out there and did whatever he was asked. Came to Iron Man of TNA, you name it, he did it. And for some reason, they let him get away with names like Mike Bailey and all these other people. And just because they left doesn't mean they're thriving. They're probably being paid quality, which kind of offsets the wrestling, even with people like Deanna Purrazzo has frustrations. Because it hits more for women because time isn't necessarily always on their side, particularly when they and don't have a family yet, a full family yet, I should say. But yeah, if they played in his face even a little, is the fact that WWE has shown with Joe Hendry what they capable of, and I don't think he has any desire to return to AEW. I think he saw the writing on the wall when he was there. I think he can see the writing on the wall now. He's probably going to be in an even lesser position if he went there now. But NXT could potentially be an option. So I can't leave it off the board. Not just because of what WWE can do, but what TNA has shown that they are willing to do to help them get their talent out the way. And they could potentially do that with Slade as well, unfortunately. So I can see it going that way, but I just hope not. But thankfully, they do have somebody like Macklin who clearly wants to stay there. Well, like you said, we'll see. I guess this weekend will be the biggest telling point of that.
I think if not Eddie, I think Macklin holds the belt for a little while. But I do think the ultimate end game will end up being one Mr. Ethan Carter III. For the people who don't know, he's from the Cleveland area. He runs a promotion called Exodus Pro Wrestling. It used to be part of the NWA. They are no longer part of it. And look, he even follows us. He's a fan. He's from what I understand, the NWA had contracts for him and his promotion, separate contracts. He did not want to re-sign as a talent, but they still wanted Exodus as a feeder system for the NWA. one of their guys, I think his name is PB Smooth. Could be wrong about that. He's this gentleman right here. If you're watching the video, that's who he is. Signed by the NWA, and he's still allowed to work Exodus Pro. Um, they do have some interesting talent. One being Dante Casanova, the El Jaguar. He's got a very dope looking outfit. He's a hell of a hand. I could see EC3 one TNA, not just because he's from the area and he's got a promotion, and Johnny Bravo did work with the promotion not that long ago, but he's actively tweeting out to TNA. Like this is something he's actively doing. He's calling himself the Threesus, as in Jesus but three, and he tags TNA in every tweet. He clearly has some desire to return to TNA. If he does, I can't imagine that would be a bad thing, especially considering the lack of talent TNA has near the top. I don't know if EC3 is what when he showed up in 2014 or late 2013, he was the new Hawkins. He was hip, exciting, hell of a hands. He had a charisma and a likability that we just hadn't seen. He's not in his 40s. He can get back to his shoulder and his knees are fine. He can still go. Not like he once, but still as good as ever, right? He's still good enough. And I think he would be a big the team brand, especially. I think they would be fortunate in him, and I think they would be even more to bring him back in his hometown on a night that could prove to be Mike Santana's last champion until he leaves for NXT or AEW. Going to AEW. Like this could be the best for TNA to have a huge on this show. I think aside from the two title changes, will be devoid of. Two-parter, do you want EC3 to be in TNA again, and do you think he will be?
Yeah, it'll be cool to see him again. I was gonna ask you, looking at what you was, about. We're seeing a lot of names come back to the company. Good.
Yeah.
Right one. I was gonna say with talking off the finance situation, do you think they're finding it more convenient and maybe more financially savvy, budget wise, to kind of ingratiate themselves to getting some of these quote unquote old heads back as a potential money saver when you would think they cost more, as opposed to, I guess, them not wanting to forwardly pay their young up and coming and potentially star talent?
I'll say it like this. I think EC3 per show will cost more than Mike Santana today per show. EC3 will cost less per show than Mike Santana will cost next. So I do think they'll spend more money today on EC3 as opposed to Mike Santana, but they'll have to spend even more on Mike Santana. And I just don't think that's something that they end up doing. I don't think they want to spend the kind of money that it would require to re-sign a Jordan Grace, a Joe Hendry, a Mike Santana. So they'll spend a little bit more to sign an EC3 and hopefully build up the next few guys underneath. That's what I think they're going to end up doing, and I do think that it's the most logical thing to do if you're just not going to re-sign your guys. Find some veterans who, while maybe a little bit more expensive now, are going to be significantly less expensive than trying to re-up your stars.
Gotcha. But yeah, it would be cool to see EC3. EC3 proper, not that last version of him that was tied to that almost promotion that happened, or promotion that happened a little bit and then faded off.
Your narrative.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, and like you said, we seen what happened with the women with the tweeting out. This is kind of a little too on the nose, particularly when it's not been something that's been consistent over the last however many years. So yeah, some of the well, some of the worst kept secrets, I don't necessarily the worst thing, but yeah, like I said, if he's one, he's kind of been needing to come back to the company in the proper fashion anyway, and I think he would shake things up in a good way, and also create some interesting matchup.
I think so. But this also brings into why I also think he's coming in. TNA has been posting these weird little updates, these coming soons. They're just posting numbers 09, 08, 30 plus 31, 07, 06. There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. And I have to have a feeling that this might be some type of allusion to the top 1%er, Mr. EC3. I don't know what this means going forward for them as a promotion and what all this means. But like, 12, 28, they're just posting random numbers. I don't know what it means, but I do think it may be leading up to EC3's return. I think it's someone's debut regardless. If it's a debut, if it's a return, yet to find out. But it is something that they've been posting about on social media for the last few days. So I don't know what
Yeah,
that
God,
means.
please don't let it be Brown. Yeah, I'm gonna hit Chad, post some of the TV all the way from here.
Yeah, no Bram, please. Never Bram. Anyone else? Never Bram. Can't believe they tried to make him a world champion in the NWA. That was dumb. I'm trying to see if there's any comments that may allude to who is coming in, but it's taking forever to load. Ricky Sosa will be on Impact this Thursday. Bang bang. Check that out.
That's so sad.
Well, it's just loading too long. We'll worry about it another day. Marcus, that takes us to the end of the show. Any final thoughts on anything?
Oh man, I hope Rebellion goes over well. TNA is always, even when they undersold their shows, the channel has been able to over deliver. It looks like it's going to be another situation here as it was for Sacrifice, which we reviewed and enjoyed. Check out our
Mm-hmm.
show from last week. So looking forward to seeing it here, and then I think I got um, more excited for the show as we talked about all the potential twists and turns that could happen, particularly with the system narrative of it all. So looking forward to it, and hope people check it out, and hope they're able to close some of this seat gap that they have, before the weekend, if at all possible.
Here's hoping. They got one more show to really sell the whole thing, so we'll see how that goes. That'll take us to the end of the show, though. RealNerdCorp.com, RealNerdCRP.com. We're on Twitter at NERDCRP. We're on our personals. Marcus, you're on Twitter at ParadoxKid, PARADOXKID.
That's the kid.
You can also find Marcus on this other podcast, The True Penny Show, over on Twitter at True Penny Show, TruePennyShow. You guys have been talking a lot about Dave Finlay, formerly known as Fit Finlay, as well as some of the New Japan stuff. What are you guys covering this week?
Yeah, this week, man, we was talking about little TJPW. They had did a recent tour in Texas. Um, so that was really cool. We did a couple shows looking at them. They got some good stuff, real good subsidiary of I think DDT, Joshi Promotions. So check that out, and like Chad said, we've been talking about Dave Finlay. Obviously, part one is up. Go check that out, and we'll probably be recording part two soon. So be on the lookout for that.
You can find me on Twitter at Chad Nerdcorp, CHADNERDCRP, and on the Instagram at Chad's Photo Hut, CHADSPHOTOHE. We'll be back next week for a Rebellion Fallout recap show. We'll see if any of our predictions came true, if EC3 does in fact show up in Cleveland, and hopefully some major talking points that can invigorate the brand and fan base heading into the most important stretch of the summer for them and spring, which is the build up to Slammiversary. For Marcus, I'm Chad. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for being a chance. Remember, as always, to watch more wrestling. And Marcus, take us home.
Good night.